Okay, let's jump over and talk about the Chiefs and the Chargers. Another interesting game on this slate, and I think a lot of people are hesitant to start people in this one because of the fact that the Chargers were so dismal on offense, but pretty strong on defense last week. Of course, you're starting the Chiefs. I meant more so like starting Chargers, and I get the hesitancy there, but pretty high over under 47.5. Chiefs are slated to win this one by about 8.5 points. Now, historically, the Chiefs and Chargers have played themselves pretty tough. Even with Patrick Mahomes here, we've seen them trade off some wins back and forth. And I think this ends up being a little bit of a closer game. I don't necessarily believe enough in Tyrod Taylor to think that he's going to be able to give this team, a massive fantasy output. But I think this is a better week for the Chargers than it was last week facing against the Bengals. Because, the offense didn't have to do a lot because they were able to slow the Bengals down completely. This defense is not going to be able to stop Patrick Mahomes. No defense can really do that at this point. So the Chargers are going to have to score points if they want to have any shot at winning this game. So that makes our starts a little bit easier. You probably don't even need me to run this back for you, but if you have Mahomes, you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you have Tyreek Hill, you have Travis Kelce, you're starting all of them. And I'm also very comfortable starting the Chiefs defense in this one. We saw last week that they still have, a very potent pass rush, and the way that Tyrod Taylor played last week, I think the Chiefs defense could actually be a pretty decent play here. Now, Sammy Watkins is probably the bigger question mark after coming out and playing pretty well in week one. We've seen him do this before. He plays really good in week one, and then it has like a little bit of a disappearing act, or last year, a massive disappearing act where he wasn't really startable for the rest of the season. But the other thing to note here is this trend actually began back in the playoffs from last year. Sammy Watkins had 3 decent games in the playoffs, was used pretty heavily in that Super Bowl run, and it continued into week one. So I am not saying that Sammy Watkins is a must bench. I'm just a skeptical fantasy owner that knows what Sammy Watkins has done for many years in a row, and I'm nervous about throwing him back into my starting lineup, but he could still end up being a pretty decent play, especially if he continues to see a high target share, or when they play against teams that just do their best to completely shut down Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins runs a little bit more open. So if you're in a bind, I don't think that Sammy Watkins is like a must bench by any means. To someone, I would at least lower my expectations until he shows that he can do it for a couple weeks. We're not starting Darrel Williams. Mecole Hardman, at this point, you can't trust him in your lineup at all. He only saw like 13% of snaps last week, and I'm not riding him at any point until we actually see him get some consistent usage. And then Demarcus Robinson looked like he didn't really belong on this team, even though he got a bunch of targets last week, so don't go chasing targets there. On the Chargers side, I'm going back to the well with Ekeler. I know Ekeler had a very disappointing showing in week one, but we just saw with Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb that just because you had a disappointing week one doesn't mean you can't rebound in week two. This is a better matchup. The Chiefs are more of a run funnel defense where they want you to run the ball against them, so that way they can defend the pass a bit better. Ekeler has put up some pretty good stat lines against the Chiefs in the past as well. So if there's any game to start Ekeler and regain your confidence in him, it's definitely this one. Now, Keenan Allen is someone that I'm very worried on in terms of the overall potential usage in this offense. I think it's still a decent start in this one. You drafted him to start him. You're going to put him back in your lineup one more time. If he ends up, bombing in this game, then you're probably going to keep him on your bench for a while. And then Hunter Henry had a pretty decent game last week. I would imagine he does the same this week. Josh Kelley is a name that, if you're in a deep league and you need to throw someone out there with the potential to have like a goal line touchdown, I think he's definitely an interesting name, but not someone I would go out of my way to start. And then Mike Williams, as we've already mentioned, the Chiefs are better at stopping the pass. The Bengals, we saw tonight, couldn't even slow Baker Mayfield down. So I wouldn't be throwing Mike Williams back out there just yet until we see if that is who Tyrod is actually going to go to more. I think this is more of a Keenan Allen game. Tyrod Taylor, I would only start in the absolute desperate situation here. And of course, you're never going to be starting a defense against the Chiefs. I have the Chiefs winning this one pretty handily, but maybe you could expect a bit more of a blowout, but I have them winning by 10. Chiefs 27, Chargers 17.